I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. Wanna cut me down. Gonna send a flag on the ground of mine. I am brave. I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Here I come. To the beat I drum. I'm not scared. Don't you see? I make no apology. It's just me.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We wanted to start off with some music, but it seems like we may be having some technical difficulties. So just to let everyone know, we are in webinar mode. So that means we are in listen only mode. We cannot see or hear you today. Please feel free to utilize the chat to, if you have any questions or anything, make sure you're changing your chat settings over to everyone so that everyone can see your good mornings and any questions that you have. You also are able to use the react functions or raise your hand functions if you have any questions or want to have any reactions or anything. And I will go ahead and send it over to Phyllis, who's going to be our presenter today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me into this space. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this morning. Hopefully, where you are is bright and sunny and hopefully not so hot because in Memphis it is like in the upper 90s. And so they got us cooking over here. My name is Phyllis Lewis, pronoun she, her. I am the CEO and founder for Love Doesn't Hurt. We help to provide crisis intervention for victims of crime in the LGBTQ plus community down in Big Shelby. And so as I'm going through any of the information, if you all have any questions or anything like that, definitely put those in the chat. If you need me to slow down, if you need me to elaborate on something, please let me know. As you are learning from me, I am also learning from you too as well. So definitely feel free to engage and talk about any experiences you've had or anything that you feel may be helpful to all of us. So we talked about love doesn't hurt. So objectives for today. Just understanding the current environment that LGBTQ plus individuals are facing, defining some key terms, also being able to recognize barriers that this particular population is navigating, as well as learning trauma-informed best practices, increasing cultural humility to create affirming services and spaces, but also identifying resources and community partners as well. So, in regards to terminology, does anybody want to take a stab at what does LGBTQ plus stand for? Or is it too early? Too early to be asking y'all questions? Or anybody want to take a jab at it? I can't see the names in the um for the participants, but I can see who said hello in the chat. Let's see if I can find a name. Hold on, we got somebody. All right, there we go. Because I was about to volunteer some people. All right, so we got lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. Absolutely. Good, good. Awesome. And so, does anyone know the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity? Please explain. Okay. Lesbian would be individuals that are identify as women, um, and they are attracted to other women. Gay would be individuals that identify as men who are attracted to other men. For bisexual, those are individuals that are attracted to not just one gender, but two genders, and that can be male, female, man, or woman. And trans meaning movement from one place to another. Those are individuals who do not identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. Um, and queer has become like an umbrella term. So, depending on what generation you talk to, they may feel different about this particular word. For the older generation, like I'm a millennial, so I was born like 85. So, typically, people who were born before me, or some of the people that are in my generation too, do not like the word queer because it was used as a derogatory term. But with the younger generation, like your Gen Z, your Alpha Gens, and things like that, they have kind of taken this word and made it their own. So now they are using it as more of an umbrella term for the community. And as far as plus, someone asks, does pansexual fall under plus? Yes, yes, it does. So pansexual is individuals that it does not matter the gender of the person. They are more so connecting with that individual versus paying attention to the gender that that person identifies as. And just to go to the next one before I do that, does anybody have any questions or need any clarity about LGBTQ plus? Because I don't know if I can see your reactions or not. Somebody give me a reaction so I can see if I can see it on my end, like a hand clap, a thumbs up. There we go. Yes. So I can see the reactions. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Good, good. So if I'm good to go, that's what I need you all to do is give me the reaction so that way I can make sure I'm hitting everybody before I move forward. What exactly is non-binary? So with non-binary, these are individuals that so when you're thinking of gender, think of gender on a spectrum. And if you are looking at the binary, you have female on one side and you have male on the other side. But with non binary, they don't fit on either one of those sides. So they're in the middle and they can shift at any point or they can remain in the middle. And sometimes people will associate androgyny with being non-binary, which means that you're getting a mixture of male and female, but that is not always the case. Sometimes you have individuals that identify as non-binary, but their aesthetic, meaning their clothing, and I'm going to go into this more later on in the training too as well, may look more feminine, but they identify as being non-binary. And so when you're looking at someone's attire, um, not using that as a way to be able to identify like what their gender is. No, don't apologize at all for asking questions. That's what I'm here for. This is a safe space. So if you have questions, please, please, please ask. This is the time to do that. And I don't get easily offended. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to put those in the chat. So with gender nonconforming, has anybody in here seen the TV show series Pose that used to come out? I think it was on FX or something like that, like a couple of years ago. No, okay. So there was a YouTube video um that was very popular. It was called Paris is Burning. And it was based upon they were following individuals during the time of the AIDS epidemic. This is like late 80s, early 90s. And they were following individuals that were in the LGBTQ plus community. And they were just showing just the behind the scenes of their lives, but also just showing how chosen families and things like that were created. And so um yes, it very beautiful documentary. And so Paris is Burning was taken and expanded to create Pose. And Pose gives a longer version of Paris is Burning. So if you haven't seen Paris is Burning, watch Paris is Burning first. And it's on YouTube. It's absolutely free. And Pose, I think, is on Hulu. And it if you have like a basic subscription or something like that, if you have Verizon, then you get it for free. But definitely it has 3 seasons to it, and it's a absolutely amazing series. And I think probably one of the best series that like authentically shows just the depth, the layers of the LGBTQ plus community, but also the barriers that the trans community too faces as well. So with gender nonconforming, those are individuals that do not subscribe to societal norms or anything like that. And so one of the examples that I use for that is one of the actors from Pose name is Billy Porter. And there was an award ceremony that Billy Porter went to that his attire gave him a lot of notoriety. The top part of his outfit was made like a suit, and it was velvet. It was so beautiful. And so the top part of his suit was black, and he had the white collar and the tie and everything like that. But once you got to around his waist area, it flared out into like this ball gown. And so gender nonconforming is pushing against like what societal norms say are supposed to be male or what are supposed to be female, and just a person, like it's just a mesh of all of it for them. They don't subscribe to having to be tied to male or female norms in that. And so intersectionality, I'm pretty sure a lot of you all have heard about that, but that is kind of looking at not just a person, but just the pieces of their identity and how those pieces can tie to like the barriers or the lack of access that they have to things because of those pieces of their identity. Does that make sense? Did I lose anybody? Are y'all still there? I know it's too early for this. All right, good, good, good. Awesome. All right, so this is the unicorn. I love using this because it gives you a visual of kind of some of the things that I've been talking about with you all. So with the gender unicorn, it breaks down like gender identity, and that is how an individual feels about self. Gender expression is what you see when you're looking at someone, like their clothing, the aesthetic, and things like that. Sex assigned at birth, that means when you were born, you came out, the doctor was like, oh, it's a girl, oh, it's a boy, or male or female. physically attracted to, that is your sexual orientation. Emotionally attracted to, that just means who you can have an emotional connection with. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your gender, your sexual orientation or anything like that. So I'm going to use myself as an example so that way you all can um, understand how it works. So for gender identity, you see how it has the circle on the left side and the arrow on the right. So for me, my gender identity will go all the way to the right on female, woman, girl, because that's how I identify personally. Um, Going down to gender expression, for me, all three of those will go all the way to the right. And that's because for me, when it comes to clothing, I dress how I feel comfortable. If it looks comfortable, I don't care if it's in the women's section, the men's section, or whatever. For me, it's clothes are clothes. Um, and when you get down to sex assigned at birth, I was assigned female at birth. And so I'm pretty sure, like in social media and just conversations, maybe that you all have heard the word cis being thrown around. Cis is mostly a medical term. So a lot of times doctors will use it. And most of the time they don't say it to their patients. They mostly just put it in their paperwork. But cis means same. So as I was talking about trans earlier, trans is movement from one place to another. Well, cis means same. So that means there's no movement. So when you hear someone refer to someone as being cisgendered, that means that they still identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. Nothing has changed for them versus someone who's trans, something has changed for them that they don't identify with the sex they were assigned at birth. And so going down to physically attracted to, for me, women and men, both of those will go all the way over to the right because I identify as bisexual. So that means that I am attracted to both men and women. And then emotionally attracted to, but all three of those will go over to the right because I can have an emotional connection to anyone. I don't have to be physically attracted to them. I can, have an emotional connection to a friend, a coworker, or anything like that. Does that make sense to everyone? Before I go to the next slide, does anybody need me to elaborate on anything? All right, I see some reactions. All right, good to go. Yay. All right, so now to give you a visual, I wanted to give you a picture of what does the gender unicorn breakdown look like. So biological sex on the left, you see the kid with the Pink Panther. Pink Panther was the homie, always will be. That's me. That's me as a kid. And so in the middle, you see like more so the expression. So at the top, that is normally how you will see me on a day to day. Outside of the hat, I was having a bad hair day, but most of the time you will see me, I am wearing like a t-shirt or shorts, especially now because it's so hot outside. Every now and then I might feel froggy and I'm like, you know what? I want to put some makeup on. I want to step outside. It's too hot to be stepping outside right now. But the bottom one is more so when I am more hyper feminine. And so on the right, you see gender identity. So with that, nothing has changed. Like since I was knee high to a duck to how old I am now, I still identify as female. So I would be considered a cisgendered woman. Does that make sense? Good, good, awesome. All right. So now bringing it on home to Big Tennessee. So in Tennessee, we have a lot of anti-trans legislation that comes through Tennessee for years. We have been leading in the wrong way when it comes to anti-trans legislation. And in that, a lot of states follow the trends of Tennessee because they're trying to see what we can make stick here, to then try things in their states, or to amend any of the bills that we have that weren't strong enough to pass, to then pass in their areas. This particular year alone, we had at least 22 pieces of legislation that were focused towards the trans community, to include things like gender affirming care restrictions, which now those things have gone into effect in July 1. And a lot of times when these legislations are passed, it's not, they don't think about the ripple effect that it can have on other populations too as well. And so one of the bills that came through was in regards to, medical professionals being able to say that they did not want to provide care for individuals based upon, that it did not align with their religious beliefs. And I don't know if any of you saw the news article about the young lady who went to the town hall because she went to the gynecologist, and because she's unwed, her gynecologist refused to give her care. And so as a result, she had to drive to Virginia to get prenatal care for her pending birth with her baby. And so it's things like that that at first it seems like it's geared towards the LGBTQ plus community, but because of the vagueness of the language, it then ripples and it impacts other demographics too as well. And so, in that, it has made it harder for individuals that are seeking gender affirming care, especially those that are under the age of 18. And so, before I go into too much, does anyone who's in here understand like what gender affirming care is? And if you don't, that's fine. And you can just put into the chat yes or no. Or if you do, give me a thumbs up or a heart or anything like that. Okay. So I got some no's. All right. So gender affirming care, a lot of times when people think of gender affirming care, they associate gender affirming care with medication. They associate it with surgeries and things like that. But gender affirming care is also a spectrum. Gender affirming care can be if you have a child that was assigned female at birth, but now identifies as male. Gender affirming care could be getting them a haircut that aligns more with the identity that they feel comfortable with. Gender affirming care could be getting them clothing that more aligns with the identity that they feel more comfortable with. It doesn't always necessarily mean that that person is being put on medication or that that person is having a surgery done. Like there's very, very rare occasions that minors are actually getting surgeries or anything like that. Actually, the medication that they use to for stopping like the puberty, it actually was created for infants that were born having periods. And so that's what the medication was created for, to give them that medication to stop the cycles from coming until they were of age that it made basically sense for those particular things to be happening. It could Gender affirming care could be mental health support to just help them navigate like the feelings that they are trying to understand. I'm pretty sure most of us have been through like middle school, right? Middle school sucks. right? It doesn't prepare kids for like high school or anything like that. I feel like there's a drop between like elementary into the transition into middle school is just not a good like, balance to getting like kids over there. And like most studies will tell you like that the highest suicidal rates are between 10 and 14, mostly for youth. And that's because not only are you dealing with middle school, you're also dealing with puberty, and also just trying to figure out like who you are like as an individual. And so imagine dealing with all of that and also dealing with like gender dysphoria. Like you don't feel comfortable in your body, you don't feel like when you look in the mirror that the person that's looking back at you aligns with who you feel that you are. And if giving someone a haircut or allowing them to wear clothing that is going to be more aligned with them to help like their mental health while they're already navigating enough on their end is going to make that person feel validated and feel safe and affirmed. I personally don't see any issues with that. Um, and so the challenges that come up sometimes with seeking support is because of the legislation that's going on, it it makes doctors afraid. It makes doctors afraid to do what they went to school for, to help, because you have a entity that's coming in that's saying if you do these things, then we're going to prosecute you, we're going to find you, we're going to, take your license or and things like that. So even individuals that are in spaces that they want to help and support, it then decreases the allies that are out there. In Memphis, we only have about 3 doctors that are visibly like out when it comes to their support around gender affirming care. We do have a lot more therapists that are coming out because about it's been over 10 years. Tennessee had passed a legislation around therapists that they could refuse to provide mental health support for LGBTQ plus individuals too as well. Um, and when also individuals are seeking support from like social service providers, sometimes it's hard to know where the safe spaces are. And a lot of times for the community, I call it the rainbow pages, they aren't going to go somewhere without asking other individuals, have they been there before? And if they have been there before, how were you treated when you went there? Like what was the vibe? Did you feel safe? Did you feel comfortable? Did you feel respected when you went there? Especially if you're going somewhere with, a friend or a family member or potentially like a partner or something like that. People are looking at what the atmosphere and everything like that looks like when they get to your places of business, or if depending on how you come in contact with the populations or the people that you serve or that you are supporting. And so thinking about the challenges that come with that, if you are working with marginalized populations, you as an advocate, a social worker, whatever context of your role is, thinking about what does that support look like for this person, because it may look different for them than it would with someone else, because of the barriers, the intersectionality that I was talking about earlier, because of the barriers their identity sometimes puts them in place. Like if you're trying to help someone who's trans like get a job, then you have to make sure that you're comfortable to have conversations about their paperwork. Like, does your name match on all of your documents? Because that could be a barrier for them um, when it comes to getting connected to, jobs and things like that. Thank you, Abigail, for sharing this amazing resource, Out Care Health. They said it's a great nationwide resource for LGBTQ plus affirming medical needs. Thank you so much. So definitely copy that and put that in your toolbox to be able to use in the future. Thank you, Abigail. I appreciate that. And so on a national level versus like a local level, also paying attention to what is going on nationally too as well. And as we know, like just because of um the climate of what we are navigating now, like that too can make it harder as to how you are providing services or how you document that you are providing services or the language that you're using when you're working with marginalized populations. And this is a time that where you got to get real creative in just figuring out how to word it in a way that you are also still remaining aligned with your mission and your vision of the work that you are doing. And so, in that, that's why it's also very important to have people on your team that have various backgrounds to be able to bring those minds to the table so that way you can be as, you know, vigilant as you can possibly be like during these times, and also connecting with other organizations too as well, just to see how they are navigating these times and being able to just support each other. So how does this impact how this particular community or people show up when it comes to getting connected to you all? um so it can impact, you know, them being afraid of discrimination, harassment, or biases, like I was saying earlier, like with the rainbow pages. Like before people go somewhere, they're going to ask someone like, what was your experience there? The stigma, the myths, especially if you're an organization that has gone through like a whole lot of turnover. May that be turnover for your entry level people or your leadership. You have to rebuild trust sometimes, because if you've had leadership in the past that was not as queer friendly as, you know, everyone else, that could run people away. If you've had community partners or collaborations that have gotten lost because of leadership issues or because of turnover issues or anything like that, like taking a look at like how that has possibly impacted your reach. When you're looking at your information as to who you're reaching and your numbers, where are your lowest numbers, and thinking about like why are those numbers as low as they are, or how are you working to reach those demographics, how are you looking to push against like the stigma and the myths that may be floating out there. And then also there's a lack of LGBTQ plus resources and shelters. A lot of times when people think of domestic and sexual violence, they think mostly of heterosexual women with children. And so, in that, when you're doing like your messaging, when you're doing outreach, or when you are working with other organizations, how are you making sure that you are communicating that you do have services that are affirming and welcoming to the LGBTQ plus community, and that your shelters are safe for those individuals to come to partake in the services that you are providing. And then also thinking about the potential trauma from negative past experiences too as well. You have sometimes that people will go to organizations to go get help and support, and then they are traumatized from something else outside of the reason why they came there in the first place. Um, that person's dead name may have been used, even though on the paperwork they put their chosen name on there, and but someone made a mistake and said their dead name instead. But no one apologized, they just moved forward. Those are things that people are paying attention to and they're thinking about. When my daughter when I was pregnant with my daughter, I ended up losing my gynecologist, and so then I had to go find another one. And so when I was going to look for a new gynecologist, when I was going into the doctor's offices, I was, evaluating my environment. Like, I was looking around, I was looking at the pictures on the wall, I was looking at the magazines on the table. And a lot of times people do that when they go into spaces because they're trying to find something that connects them to the space, that lets them know that this is a safe space. And so a lot of the doctor's offices that I went to, they did not have women of color with children. Most of the pictures on the wall were non-women of color. The magazines, most of them were like women um, who did not look like me, that had families, or it just did not make me feel like this was a place that was going to have me in top of mind in the care that I needed. And in being a high risk pregnancy, I wanted to make sure that whomever that provider was going to be was someone that was going to take the time, and I was not going to be just another number. And so a lot of times we've had organizations here in Memphis and also in other areas too as well that have closed because there has been like negative interactions, and that has rippled into now those places are known as like not such safe places for particular people to go. And so then they lose those numbers, and then over time, a lot of us know, like, with a lot of places, if you don't have the numbers, it doesn't match the need, and that also impacts the funding, which then impacts the capacity of the organizations. And then when they lose funding, some of them cease to exist. And we need those spaces, but we need those spaces to be healthy places for people to be able to go. So I want to thank you all for being here. So that way we're having conversations like this so that we can move the needle. And so when it comes to trauma informed affirming services, like thinking about safety, like, one, it takes a lot for someone to even admit that they need help. And so when you are thinking about your space that you're inviting survivors into, thinking about how are you making sure that that space feels safe? If they're meeting you in person, what does your cubicle, your desk, your office, your lobby, what do those areas look like? What type of pictures do you have in your areas? Like, do you have a good mesh so that way everyone has the ability to see something that relates to themselves when they're coming into your space? And then also remembering the power of choice. A lot of times, survivors, when they're coming into the situation, they haven't had the autonomy to have choice. And so letting them know, like, you are the expert in you. I just happen to have access to resources that you're trying to get connected to. So tell me, how can I help you? What do you need? One of the like best lessons that I ever got when I started doing this work was um, basically the goals that you may have for a client is not necessarily the goals that they may have for themselves. And so the best thing you can do is just manage your expectations by asking them what their goals are. So that way you can help them meet their goals that they have. Um, and then the third one is collaboration. When you're thinking of collaboration, thinking about who is not at the table, when you're going to these task force meetings, when you're going to these networking meetings, when you're meeting new community partners, look around you and see who is missing, whose voice isn't at the table. And that's important, because when you're missing voices at the table, you miss opportunities for growth, or you miss opportunities to be able to catch something on the front end versus having to deal with it on the back end. And then also there's the saying, iron sharpens iron. So you don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. And we also are human. We don't know every single thing about everything. And so having more minds at the table to collaborate on projects helps to make sure that you aren't the only person carrying the load. Like there are other people that want to help and support and are aligned with your mission and your vision, or the work that you're trying to do. And so you don't have to do it alone. We don't have to work in silos. We're better when we're together. Um, and then trustworthiness, thinking about, are you putting yourselves in a position where someone feels that you are trustworthy, to share some of the deepest, darkest things that have happened with them. Making sure that you're not, hyper reactive. I'm not saying that you're not going to make a face, or that when someone tells you something that you're not going to feel something by what you are hearing. You are human. That's going to happen. But just making sure that you're keeping that as enclosed as you possibly can. And also making sure that you are doing what you need to do to pour into your cup too as well, because this work is heavy work. And so in it, you have to make sure that you are doing right by you as you are navigating through it too as well. And then empowerment. I think this is one of the most beautiful things to see with survivors is they have the skills, they have it in them. You are just helping them blossom. You are helping by encouraging them. You are helping by connecting the dots for them, to the resources that they're trying to get to and that they need, so that way they can get to where they want to be. And to see that beautiful journey of them believing in themselves again, to them trusting themselves again, to them realizing the power that they actually have, is like one of the most like just amazing things that I've ever seen in my life. And it's a great thing to be a part of and to see. But also, like, you all are amazing at everything that you do. And without you doing what you do, it wouldn't create the ripple effect for the survivors that you all are supporting. So thank you for the amazing work that you all are doing. So before I go to the next slide, is everybody good? All right. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so practical steps when it comes to like things around like inclusivity. Looking at your language, and I'm not just talking about the language that you are saying out loud, but also like thinking about the questions that you have like in your paperwork, looking at that. We talked about the visual like indicators, like things that are in like the lobby areas and things too as well. A lot of organizations are getting connected with things like language line and things like that. So making sure that you have access to, if you don't have someone that's bilingual or anything like that that's working in your office, like seeing how you can get connected to things like language line to just help take that barrier away from your organization. Also, yes, absolutely, body language. Like if you are seeming like you're offish or you're closed, then it doesn't give the person that's on the opposite side of that like welcoming vibes. They want to know that you are interested, that you are present with them. And if your body language looks off, then that is going to shift the rapport that's going on between you and the person. Also thinking about staff training. What does that look like? How much input are you getting from your staff to see what they want, to be trained on, because sometimes if you have the leadership making the decisions about the training, but they're not necessarily the boots to the ground. They're not seeing the trends that are going on with the populations, and the people that you're serving. They may not be in a place where they can touch grass and realize that some of the training that they may have suggested may not be helpful to you. And so making sure that when you're thinking about staff training, that it is inclusive and it includes the voices of the people that are actually going to be doing the work. And then policy review. I think this is something that's important to review once a year. And the reason that I say that is because times change, people change, culture changes. And so in that, reviewing like policies, make sure that you are staying relevant to the times, that you are staying consistent as the times are changing. And following like best practices, but also things that are showing that you are making efforts to move the needle. I've worked in places that they haven't changed their policies in over 20 years. And so some of the things, the language is outdated. And so in that is like, just because you've been doing it for 20 years doesn't mean that it's been a good 20 years in that. Any other questions? Anybody else got any other input before I go to the next slide? Are we good? I'm trying to look for the reactions. All right, there we go. So also considerations as you are supporting the clients, the populations, the survivors that you're working with, being mindful of confidentiality. You might come in contact with a client who is not out. May that be about their sexual orientation or their gender identity. And so that is information. One, if someone shares that with you, that means that they are trusting you to keep that information safe. And also, when you're thinking about confidentiality and you're holding information for someone else, remind yourself that just because you may be a safe person, that does not mean that other people are. And so that's why the example that I used earlier around like using that person's dead name when they're like called in the lobby to come back or anything like that. Like the person who called the dead name may, they realize they made a mistake, but that doesn't mean that the other people that are in the lobby that you just dead named the client that you were working with, that doesn't mean that they're safe people. And you may have unintentionally put a target on the person's back that you're trying to help and support by unintentionally sharing that piece about them. And so just being mindful that if safety is one of the things that is priority, making sure that you are keeping individuals' information as confidential as you possibly can. Um, and thinking about like best practices when it comes to like just being ethical. Um, I know in Tennessee they just passed a bill that for teachers they don't have to use like students, you know, pronouns that they prefer, their chosen pronouns. They don't have to respect those. And so in it, it's like, is that ethical? Um, Especially in an environment where like the students are going to be around you more than they are going to be around like their parents and things like that. And so you want them to be focused on, that you're not treating them with dignity and respect, or do you want them to be focused on their schoolwork? Um, and thinking about best practices for your organization. Like, what does that look like? How are you all making sure that you are being respectful to everyone? Um, and also thinking about, like, for those of you who may work with kids. So for us, with Love Doesn't Hurt, we only work with 18 and up. However, we do have families for the adults that we're working with that have children, that we work with. And so thinking about what does that look like as you may have contact with kids, or if you're working more directly with kids, if you have a kid that discloses that they're trans, or that they are LGBTQ plus, how has your organization made a decision how to deal with those circumstances? And if you haven't talked about it, maybe that's a conversation that you all should be having, that if a youth that you're working with discloses, how do you handle that? And then also mandatory reporting. For any of my clients, I let them know that I am a mandatory reporter. In that way, you're putting that up front. But what I also have found in when it comes around mandatory reporting is anytime I've had to make a report, that I have also made sure that I've explained like what that process potentially looks like. So that way the person is aware. And that they then can take with that information and do with it as they wish to prepare themselves for what potentially is to come. Now, I don't know about any of you, but DCS I know is overloaded with everything that is going on right now, and so the um follow up to the reports may not be as timely as they have been, in the past or anything like that. But it is your responsibility to make sure that, anyone that you're working with that knows that you're a mandatory reporter, just in case something does come up and you don't want them to be blindsided that all of a sudden now you're making this report about this thing if they already know ahead of time that that is part of your role. Any other questions or anything before I go to the next slide? We good? All right, there we go. Good, good. So, when it comes to collaborating with community partners, again, like looking around the table to see who is missing. Um, if you are talking about homelessness, do you have people at the table that have experienced homelessness? Otherwise, if you haven't, then you're not getting that information from the source. Where do you find information for parents who are trying to help their young person navigate these waters, or for them to be more informed? So some places, I know here in Shelby County, we have Out Memphis, and Out Memphis helps with parents who are trying to be better informed about just helping their children navigate that. Now, the CDC used to have a tab for it as well. But I think during this administration that has been taken down. And then I see Amber, she just put something for P flag in Nashville. And so I don't know if there's a P flag on the east. I know Memphis has a P flag too as well. But yeah, no, also if you go to P Flag's website, you should be able to find their different chapters too as well. And then also around like collaborating with community partners, like listing the local like LGBTQ plus centers, like what are the crisis lines, what are the nonprofits, what are the social justice organizations, too as well. Okay, Chattanooga got a P flag too. Awesome, thank you for sharing, Aaliyah. That's always great to know. And also thinking about how does your referral network look like. I do have a list of different organizations, and I will share that with Amber and Heather so that way you all will be able to have that to refer to. It's not all inclusive, so there may be some things on there that are missing, but it will definitely help to give you a good starting point, so that way you all can make your own connections based upon like the needs of your organization, but also the needs of your clients. And the more people you know and the more people you network with, like that's a ripple effect too. And so sometimes you may know someone that has reach in areas that you don't have access to, but because they know the type of work that you do, they will send people to you and connect people to you. And so, action steps and best practices. One, like making sure that you're doing an audit. And I'm not just talking about an audit about your money. I'm talking about an audit as far as like your practices with your people, the people that you have coming in, looking at like, are they satisfied? Is your organization, getting feedback or doing surveys from the clients that you're working with? Where are the gaps? If there's a particular service that you see that's continuously coming up, if it's not something that your organization is planning on offering in-house, what are you all doing to help maybe find a community partner that does provide that particular service? So that way, even if you aren't able to offer it, you're able to help lead your client or survivor in the direction that is not going to put them in a place of hopelessness. Because nobody likes to tell someone like, oh no, we can't help you, and no, I don't have any other options for you either. And thinking about, what does your commitment look like? In the work that we are doing, like I said, it is heavy and sometimes it can be hard. And that vicarious trauma that you are experiencing as you are working with people and you are hearing some of the most gruesome, ugliest things that someone can do to someone that they say that they care about. You have to make sure that you have the capacity for that type of work. And sometimes you have to check in with yourself to see like how committed you are to this, how, where's your capacity, and you have to check in with yourself too. And so the audit is also for you too, checking in with you and seeing how you're doing and making sure you're not burnt out. Because if you are pouring from an empty cup, then you're no good to yourself, you're no good to anybody else. And so you have to make sure that you're taking care of self too as well. And then also building your network around you, finding other people that are just as passionate as you are about this work, and moving the needle and seeing how you can work together to build a safety net for the communities and the populations that you are wanting to serve. And advocate looks different to everybody. Not everybody is a protester and can get out there, and beat the street. Some people are logistics, some people are the media, some people are the outreach, some people have different roles in what that advocacy looks like. And so honing in on where your strengths are and how you can best support these communities, your organization, yourself, as you are supporting these causes and moving forward. And then another resource, the Seed Theater is a great resource in Chattanooga as well. And Leah put the website for them. Thank you so much for sharing that resource. And so, like I said, I'm going to send the list to Amber and Heather so that way you can have it. It has hotlines, websites on it too as well, and some publications to kind of give you a starting point with just some different resources that you can have. And so for this part, I base this upon um the pre-assessment that you all completed. So thank you so much for completing that. And for the most part, a lot of you, your baseline was very good. And so the only thing that I saw that the numbers were not consistent was around the difference between tolerance and acceptance. So someone in their own words tell me what they define as tolerance, and then someone else um give me the definition of acceptance. So if you had to describe tolerance to someone, how would you describe that? And if you had to define acceptance, how would you define that? Okay, tolerance. I see tolerance as putting up with and acceptance as embracing. Good. Thank you so much, Kara. Did I say that right? Is it Kara? Good. Tolerance. Someone can exist and I won't be discriminatory to them, but I won't go out of my way to be kind or helpful to them. Thank you, Amber. All right. Do we have anybody else before I go into our first scenario? All right. I think that might be it. All right. So what we're going to do is go through a couple of scenarios. And then after the scenarios, I have 3 questions for you. And so the first scenario is around workplace lunch table. And so the context is there's a new employee who is openly LGBTQ plus who joins the team. They bring a same gender partner to a company picnic. During lunch at work the following Monday, coworkers say nothing negative, but also avoid interacting or sitting with this particular employee. Is this tolerance or acceptance? And you can put a T or an A in the chat. All right, I see a lot of T's. Okay, so what might acceptance look like in this particular scenario? If we're saying that what happened more so fell on the tolerance, side of the spectrum, what would acceptance look like in this particular scenario? Sitting with the person and engaging with that person. Thank you, Amy. Yep, that's absolutely correct, right? Because if they were sitting with that person before, the only thing that has changed is now that you know that this person has a spouse that's the same gender. Like you've been talking to them before then. Said, trying to be close to them, the group should continue to welcome the person, asking questions of everyone, not just LGBTQ plus employees, about their life and their family, engaging in a relationship and inviting in conversations. Awesome. Good job. Okay, so the last question that I have around this discriminating and demonstrating interest with conversation. Good, good, good. The last question that I have is how would this behavior impact or affect the employee long term? The one that did bring their same gender partner after having an experience like this. How may it impact them? Can't leave that office fast enough. Absolutely. Job satisfaction. They will feel withdrawn and isolated. Emotional safety will be impacted. Job safety. Good, good. Awesome. The employee's job satisfaction slash isolation would be negatively impacted, not feeling opted or collaboration is limited. Absolutely. Um, so the next scenario that I have is a student asks their teacher and classmates to use they them pronouns. The teacher agrees, but occasionally misgenders the student and doesn't correct the other students who do the same. The student feels awkward but doesn't speak up again. Is the teacher tolerating or accepting the student? Put a T or an A. All right. See a lot of T's. The teacher is trying to accept but demonstrating tolerance, both. Does the student want the teacher to speak up? Neither needs to be correct. All right. So the first one, dang, I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at all of your comments. Okay, so the teacher is trying to accept but demonstrating tolerance. So you are um correct. Like the teacher is trying to accept, but occasionally they are having slip ups and misgendering. Um but what I also see in that is that they don't correct the students. So the teachers, so whose job is it to control the classroom? Would it be the student's job or would it be the teacher's job? I see a T for teacher. You can put T for teacher, S for students. Okay. So, Mary, you put both. Can you tell me why you put both? And Toya, you said it depends on what the student is most comfortable with. And so I can see how you all can say both. And so when it comes to like when you're thinking about like classrooms or like workplaces and things like that, people are typically looking to people for authority. And so they're looking to who they feel is the authority figure in the room. That authority figure could be a teacher, that authority figure could be a supervisor, it could be, like a CEO, someone who it feels like that particular person is that is someone that if they deem that you have done something that is wrong, that you could be possibly reprimanded for it. Typically in like classroom like settings, the students follow the lead of the teacher sometimes. So if the teacher, even though the teacher is like not intentionally like trying to misgender them, but they're making mistakes in doing it, um, I know in this particular scenario, it doesn't say anything about the teacher apologizing for like when they do accidentally like misgender the student. But what it also doesn't say anything is when the students are misgendering this particular student that the teacher is correcting them, um, and letting them know like, hey, that's not that student's pronoun, because we are all works in progress, right? So we're gonna make mistakes. Nobody's a robot. No one's gonna be perfect every time that these things happen. And so um when it does happen, like having a conversation about it, and there is a possibility of cooperative efforts. Teacher will remind students, and students will remind teachers, so that they are working together to get it right for our fellow classmate. Yeah, and having those conversations. Mary, when the teacher opts with pronouns, there can be tolerance by the students and the classmates, but purposeful misuse needs to be corrected. Absolutely. Good, 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 good. And so I'm gonna give you all one more. So this one is casual conversation at work. During a team meeting, someone says, "You're so articulate for someone from that part of town." When the comment is addressed later, the person says, "I didn't mean anything by it. It's just my opinion. People are too sensitive." Is this a moment of tolerance, acceptance, or microaggression? So T for tolerance, A for acceptance, M for microaggression. All right, I see a lot of M's. Good. And so you're correct. It does fall under the microaggression. So what beliefs are at play in that particular statement? So Mary, you put I will be careful with interpretation. Okay, so when it comes to things like that, even though the person's intent may not have been a particular thing, it doesn't mean that the action didn't cause harm. And so in it, if someone um is using if they're correlating you being articulate to the part of town that you grew up in, they're basically saying they didn't have expectations of you to basically speak intelligently because of where you came from. And so that's why, like, when these things come up, may it be like on the tolerance side, the acceptance side, or it's hearing a microaggression, like having the conversations to be able to let someone know this may not have been your intent, but this is the impact it had on me or other people. And so that way they can have the awareness, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with language, like they can have the awareness of the impact that that language has to the individuals that they're speaking with. So that way they can have that information to know in the future they need to pivot, and that's not something that they need to um address. But Kara, for what you said, like they're saying like you're too sensitive, that shows that they don't really care. And in certain some circumstances, you're gonna have people that they don't care. And so you can't control like other people. All you can do is just control your particular actions. And then Amber, you put intent is not impact. Intent can be discussed, but the change needs to happen in the one making the aggressions, not the one who felt the harm, right? So we don't think about it like this. When we're working with survivors, we don't tell them that they need to change the behavior of their abusers. We more so focus on um how to keep themselves safe. And so in circumstances like this, that sentiment is kind of the same. Like you can have a conversation with someone and tell them that they did a microaggression, but if they don't have the awareness to understand that they did that, or they minimize the impact that their words possibly have, then you have a choice. in that, especially if it's like a coworker or something like that. Like, you can minimize the access that that person has to you. You can go speak to someone that is potentially above that person, to have a conversation with them, because you've already taken the first step in having a direct conversation with them. But you can't control how they move forward. All you can do is, with the awareness that you have about their behaviors, help that will help to help you understand how to navigate in moving forward. So we have made it to the end, almost, the Q&A part. I know it got a little heavy towards the end, but it's okay though. Y'all made it. Y'all made it. Y'all some troopers. Hand claps to y'all. So, any questions that have been burning in the corners of your mind while we've been doing this training? And then also there is a Q&A box, that if you have a question that you want to ask anonymously, um, definitely feel free to use that too as well. But I have definitely enjoyed um, hanging out with you all this morning, and just the questions and the feedback, and just the insight, and also the resource sharing too as well has been great too as well. So thank you. Amber, do you see any questions on your side?
I do not, but I do want to thank you so much for giving us your time and for joining with us from my favorite city in the world. A question just came through. It says, as someone who is only out to save people, any suggestions on picking my battles?
Okay, repeat that for me again.
It says, as someone who is only out to save people, are there any suggestions on picking my battles?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is something that I am, as a person that's out, um, I am navigating the picking my battles um thing, because you have to think about your peace at the end of the day. And as I was talking about earlier, like, everyone doesn't have the same awareness. Um and arguing, my mom told me a long time ago, she was like, don't argue with a fool, they'll beat you with experience. And and that's because, like, you have to know, like, when you are talking to someone, if they are showing you that they are not a safe space, if they are hell bent on not holding space for you or for others, then that lets you know that, uh, we all grown here. Let's keep it a buck. They're not worth, the energy that is going to take to have that type of conversation with them, because they may not have the awareness to understand that there's holes, that there's flaws, that, because sometimes, a lot of times when people have opinions, it's based upon lack of access, experience, exposure, and things like that. So if they can't even relate to your experience, then there's a possibility that they will not be able to hold space for you. And so, therefore, you have to hold space for yourself and understand that this is not a space that I need to continuously expose myself to, because it can be more detrimental to you to continue to be in those spaces when if you had the opportunity to walk away, or thinking about, is there an opportunity for you to pivot so that way this person has less access to you, especially if it's like a coworker or something like that that you are coming in contact with on a regular basis, figuring out, is there a roundabout way to still do what you got to do, but having less contact with this person. I hope that helps.
There's a couple more coming in. What resources are available for faith-based organizations and how can they help to create a safe space?
Ah, that is always good. So, your local prides, I know, in Nashville, you all have Nashville Cares. right? That's over you all's pride up there in Memphis, like West Tennessee area. Um uh, with Out Memphis, Miss Out Pride. Um they have a group right now with the West Tennessee area, at least, that they are trying to bring more faith-based organizations together, so that way people know like where they can go, especially those that are spiritual and want to get connected to places where they will feel affirmed and welcomed.
Okay, thank you. And then there's one more question that came in. When trying to be accepting but accidentally misgendering, is it recommended recognizing the error or letting them correct you?
Oh, go ahead and recognize it and then move forward. Don't just sit there and continuously like be in this place of like apology, because then what happens is the person is focusing on getting you to stop apologizing when you could just keep like moving. Like I have a lot of friends that have transitioned. And so in it, like it's a transition for you too. And most people understand that. And so if you accidentally misgender someone, you're like, I mean, ma'am, sir, and then you're like, my apologies. And then you say the correct pronoun and then you move forward. But if you sit there and just ruminate on it, then the focus shifts from the mistake that you made to now this person making you feel better about the mistake that you made when you can just move forward. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing any other ones.
All right. So this QR code has my contact information on it. So that way, if you want to reach me, you can. And then I'm also going to put my email address in the chat too as well. But thank you so much for inviting me into this space. I appreciate it. Anytime, and just being to be in a space with other advocates that are just doing amazing work. And I just want you to know that each of you are appreciated. And I know sometimes this work is thankless and it doesn't seem like it's getting any easier, but you all are amazing at what you do. And thank you for even taking the time to come and be a part of a training like this, especially during, the times and the climate that we are navigating right now. So I appreciate each and every one of you for coming and holding space for me during this time. So, and thank you, Amber, and thank you, Heather, for inviting me to as well. And I hope that you all have an amazing day and week.
Yes, thank you so much. You all will be receiving an email with the recording of this training, and also we will make sure that we include any of the links that were sent and resources that were sent in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. We also will make sure that you have our presenter's email address and contact information. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great day.